if you're trying to sell to large companies, this is worth knowing, is that it's great if you can sell to a large company because it's a large company, man. And so the potential for the sale is astronomical. But large companies are so slow, you cannot believe it. And so it might take you 3 years. First of all, you have to find who you should talk to. That's impossible because all the people that you can talk to have no decision-making power whatsoever. So all you do is waste your time talking to them. They'll talk to you, they'll have meetings with you, but it won't matter because they don't have any decision-making power. And then you can't get access to people who have the decision-making power because they don't let you have access to them. And so that's a huge problem. And even figuring them out is a huge problem. And even figuring out that those are the people that you need to talk to is a huge problem. So that might take you 5 years just to get it through your head that you're wasting your time 95% of the time talking to the wrong people. And so then the next thing that happens, this is really comical. So let's say you do make some headway. It takes you 3 bloody years. You've made a relationship with the person. They're ready to launch it, and then they have to market it internally, and that takes them a year because they have to convince everybody to get on board. And then the corporation reshuffles, and the person that you're dealing with disappears. It's like, that happened to us. We were marketing to a very large company. We got all the way up to the CEO and ready to, this was with the Future Authoring Program. And we were ready to launch the damn product. It took us a huge amount of time to get through all the layers. And just the week that we were going to launch it, the CEO resigned and the company's stock crashed. And that was the end of that. Bang. And large companies are like that. Like, they're extremely slow. And the typical duration that a person lasts in a given position, and this is something to consider with regards to your careers, is about 4 years. So you'll occupy the position you're in for about 4 years. And then, well, you'll either fail out, you'll move laterally, or you'll move up. And so it's a 3-year sales cycle minimum. And that's interweaved with the possibility that whoever you're talking to is just going to disappear. And then if you sell to small companies, well, they're faster, but they don't have any money. So that's not very helpful. So it's extraordinarily difficult, even if you produce something of high value and that you have proof that the thing exists. It's extraordinarily difficult to sell it. And so here's another thing to think about. Or if you write a book, which is virtually impossible, and then get a publisher, which is virtually impossible, you probably have a rejection rate of 99%. So then if you do manage to publish the book with a reasonable publisher, which you won't because it's impossible, then you get 8% royalties. That's it. So 92% of your labor goes to the sales, marketing, and distribution end of things. And so it's very, very difficult to generate capital as an entrepreneur. And there's innumerable impediments. One of the things that people do, and this is something for those of you who might be entrepreneurially minded, here's another thing that you have to understand, is that you can't really create a product and then launch it. Because first of all, you don't know how to do that. You might know how to create the product, but you do not know how to market or sell it. You don't know how to advertise it. You don't know how to communicate about it. You don't know how to ship it. Like, there's all sorts of things you just don't know. But worse is, you don't know if people will use it. And so what companies do that roll out new products on a relatively continual basis do is they don't develop the product and then go sell it. They continually communicate with their customers about what product the customer is willing to buy next, and then they develop that. And so you have to have your market identified, and then you have to be in continual communication with the market while you develop the product. It's not, I build a better mousetrap and the world comes, marching to my door. That isn't how it works. Is that you got to find out if someone wants to buy your stupid thing. And then the next thing is that even if you have a great thing, you're going to go talk to people and they have 50 great things that they might buy. And they're all great, but they're not going to buy all 50. They might buy one, maybe, and maybe they'll buy it this week, but probably they'll buy it in 6 months. And they're not going to buy any of them, no matter how great, unless they're on fire and you're selling water. Because they're so busy already, right? They're so overwhelmed and preoccupied by their jobs that if you come in and you say, well, here, this is going to increase your efficiency by 20%, and here's the 3 weeks you'd have to spend doing that, and then the payoff would come in the next years, they'll say, yeah, well, I'll do that as soon as I have time. And as soon as I have time is never. So if they're on fire and you have water, you can sell it to them. But that's all, because otherwise it's a no-go. So those are all things that are worthwhile knowing, because they're very hard to learn. And very comically, I mean, if you would have told me when I first started developing these tests that One of the reasons corporations wouldn't buy them was because they worked. That I would have just thought, really? I mean, come on, really? That's really the reason? It's like, yeah, that's the reason. God. So very, very, very problematic. And then they already have their processes in place and they're entrenched. And then the next problem is, you haven't got any customers. I think I told you that before. You don't have any customers, and you show them the statistics, but they can't understand the statistics, and they also have 200 other people selling them things, and 50 of them are crooks, so they're just lying about what they're doing, and they can't tell the difference between the liars and the people who are telling the truth, and so they can't understand the statistics for themselves, and they can't verify them anyways. So what they ask you is, who else is using it? And if the answer is, well, everybody, then you don't even have to do the sale because you're already rich. And if the answer is nobody, then they're going to say, well, why is nobody using this? You say, well, it's the hottest thing that's come along. And they think, well, I'm not going to be the sucker who gets painted, red and fired because this failed. That they do not think this might make me succeed. People do not care about whether or not they succeed. They care about whether or not they fail. And so that's another thing, is that if you're marketing something and you can say this will stop you from being identified as a failure, then people might be happy about that. But if you say this will really help you succeed, it's like, no, I don't want to succeed. I just don't want to fail. I don't want to succeed. I just want to be invisible and be left alone. And if you're looking for people's fundamental motivation, that's it. They want to be invisible and they want to be left alone. I'll tell you this zebra story. This tells you everything you need to know about human beings. So it's worth knowing. Okay, so zebras have stripes, and people say, well, that's for camouflage. And then you think about that for 2 seconds, and you think, that's a really stupid theory, because lions are camouflaged, and they're like golden like the grass. And zebras are black and white, so you can see a zebra 5 miles away. It's like, there's a zebra, it's black and white. So the whole camouflage thing, that's just not working out so well as a hypothesis. Okay, so biologists go and they decide to take a look at some zebras. And so they're looking at a zebra on the herd, because there's no zebra, right? Just like there's no fish. There are schools of fish and there are herds of zebras. There isn't a fish. This is why I think the cod aren't coming back. There are no cod. There are massive 100-mile-long schools of cod, 10 stories deep, 20 million years old. You wipe out the school, you don't just get to throw a cod in the water and say, well, off you go. It's like, well, where's my city? It's like launching you in the middle of a field. It's like, well, go out there and reproduce. It's like, no, that's not going to happen, So without the school, there's no cod, and you can't just introduce a whole school of cod because you don't have a whole school of cod. So, maybe the cod are never coming back. And zebras are the same thing. There's not a zebra. There's zebras. And so you're looking at the zebras, trying to study a zebra, and you look at the zebra and you make some notes and you look up and you think, oh, Christ, which zebra was I looking at? And the answer to that is you don't know, because the camouflage is against the herd. And the black and white stripes. There's a variety of reasons for the stripes. Flies also seem not to like the stripes, but usually things evolve for multiple reasons. But anyways, it's very difficult to parse out a zebra against the herd. You look down, you look up, it's like, uh-oh, all those damn zebras look the same. Yes, the camouflage is effective, but it's against the herd. All right, so then you think, well, we better identify a zebra so we can see what he's up to. So then you take your Jeep and a can of red paint and a stick with a rag on the end of it, and you drive up to the zebras and you paint their haunch red a little bit, put a nice red dot on their haunch, or maybe clip their ear with a cattle clip. And then you stand back and you think, hey, I'm pretty smart, now I'm going to watch that zebra. So what do you think happens to the zebra? The lions kill it. Right. Because lions, they're smart, right? Hunting animals are smart. But they have to identify a zebra before they can organize their hunt. They can't just hunt the whole herd. They have to pick out a zebra. And so maybe it's like a zebra that's got a sore hip or something. And so you think, well, nature's kind. It just takes the weak. No, zebra or lions like really healthy, delicious zebras. But they look like all the other healthy, delicious zebras, so they can't get a bead on them. But if they're small and just born, or if they're limping, or there's something that identifies them, then the lions can pick them out. And then they do pick them out. And so the rule for human beings is keep your damn stripes on so the lions don't get you. And I'm telling you, that's a good thing to learn. People camouflage themselves against the herd, and they like to be in the middle of the herd, which is what fish do, by the way. If you have a big school of fish, the smart, healthy, large fish are in the middle of the school. Because you know what you call fish on the outside of the school? Bait. Right. So that's what people are doing. They're trying to move into the middle of the herd all the time. And the herd moves around, or the school moves around, and people are going, well, I'm in the middle. I'm staying in the middle here. So I've got this protective ring of people around me so the predators don't pick me out and do me in. So, okay, so that's part of the reason why I said, well, you can't sell something to someone for success. Because, you're thinking, well, people are aiming at success. Don't be thinking that. It's not by any means necessarily. Well, let's say I've never traded with anyone, and I go up to someone and I say, well, do you want to trade? And they say, well, why? How can I trust you? And the answer to that is, well, you have to take my word for it. Well, that's not a very good argument. You might say instead, well, here's what I have to offer, and you can evaluate it. But the person's likely to say, well, I don't know how to evaluate it, and so I'm still stuck with taking your word. So that's a bad problem. And you'll see that if you ever try to sell a product in the marketplace, is if the product is new and it's complex, then you're forcing the person that wants to buy it to evaluate it, and then you're forcing them to take the risk of being wrong as well as the time it would take to evaluate it, and they don't like that. What they want is what's often called social proof, which is, okay, well, you want to trade with me, who else have you traded with? And if the answer is 0, then they are going to say, well, you're an interesting person and all that, but I've got these other people over here who've already traded with a bunch of people, and therefore the risk is lower, in part because, let's say, I have a supervisor and I'm going to make a decision. And my primary concern is that my supervisor will not hate me for making the decision. It's not that my primary concern is to make the best decision. It's not the same thing. It's that I want to make a decision that I'm not going to get in trouble for. Okay, so how do I do that? Because I need a post hoc justification. So I buy something from you and it turns out to be terrible. And I get called on the table for it. And what do I say? I say, well, that person was buying from it, and that person was buying from him, and that person was buying from him. Like, all these other people were doing the same thing, so it's not like the error is localized in me, and that's often a very credible story. But if the answer is, well, I evaluated it and decided to take a risk, it's like, well, out the door with you, Sonny, because, that's an indication that you're not capable of doing that sort of thing. So I think part of the reason that people spiral downhill into 0 is because positive feedback, like a positive feedback loop, is a loop that increases the probability that the loop will continue, right? A positive feedback loop is, you've experienced this when you hear microphone feedback in an amplified system. So, the microphone sends a message to the speakers, and then the speakers send out the message amplified, and then the microphone picks up the message and it gets amplified again, and you get this howling occur, which can be deafening, but can also destroy the system because it'll keep amplifying upward until the speakers blow, for example. That's a positive feedback loop. And a positive feedback loop can spiral you upward, or it can spiral you downward. And so a virtuous circle, a virtuous positive feedback loop is when, well, I've traded with him, and I've traded with him, and I've traded with him, and now I can say to you, I've traded with these 3 people, and you go talk to them and they say good things, and so then you say, well, I'll trade with you, and then because of that, then you're even more likely to trade with me, and it's like the thing starts to spiral uphill, and it does that, I think, in a nonlinear form. And so there's easy fruit hanging that you could pick, and I would recommend that you do that.
Do not forget to click the like button, leave your comments below, share the video, and if you've not yet subscribed, subscribe to the channel to join the community for more interesting contents. We really appreciate your visit to our channel. Thanks for watching and see you on the next one.